In this episode, we travel to Columbus, Ohio, where signs substitute for sidewalks on suburban arterials. Our intersection of the month in Bethesda has recently been made more difficult to cross by the Maryland Department of Transportation. And we talk with the staff of the Hawaii Centers for Independent Living about their transportation concerns. Stay tuned. We're in Columbus, Ohio with Janine Stanley. We're at the intersection of Hard Road and Smoky Row. What sort of perils do pedestrians face around here?
Oh, well, the primary one is not being recognized. Motorists here aren't looking for a pedestrian at all when they come up to this intersection, because this is the only stoplight for quite a way on either of these streets, and so they can build up a good bit of speed and get ready to race through the intersection if they can run the light or turn the corner. And so they're not at all looking for anybody to be standing at the corner waiting to cross.
Now, I noticed there aren't any sidewalks around here. What sort of difficulties does that present?
If you want to walk to the intersection, you've got to either walk along the side, right along the side of the road, and people often will drive off the berm to get around somebody who's going too slow, so you run the risk of being bumped. Or you can walk in the ditch, which is usually full of debris and broken glass and dog droppings and all sorts of things, and mud. And here at the corners, if you're going to an express bus stop and you're going to work and you're dressed fairly nicely, you've got to slog through the mud in order to get to the bus stops.
So what sort of improvements could the city make around here?
Sidewalks. Sidewalks and more sidewalks. We are getting an audible traffic signal up here, which will make it easier for me to cross Hard Road, but that's not going to solve the problem of the cars not even knowing that we're here. And I think the sidewalks will help with visibility a little bit in making the motorists aware that we're actually trying to cross here. A lot of kids come up through this way to get to the library, to get to the school, to get to the daycare center, etc. And I've stood at the corner with a group of kids who waited for me to come so that they could get across the street safely.
We're in Columbus, Ohio with Bonnie Beth Mitchell, who's the manager of the Northwest Library.
Hi, John.
This is a lovely library. How long have you been open?
The library's been open since April 16th of 1996, and we are very, very happy with the way the library worked out in terms of its interior environment and its ability to serve patrons in this part of Franklin County.
And has it been popular? Do you find a lot of patrons coming?
We have been very busy since we opened, and that proves to us that we needed to be here. We have circulated almost 500,000 books or AV items in the first 6 months that we were here. Our counter tells us that over 250,000 people have been in the library in the first 6 months, and we have registered over 5,000 new library patrons.
It does sound like it was well needed. Is it difficult for people to get here?
It's a little bit difficult for anyone that wants to get here in any way other than a car, and even difficult if you're in a car also, as I will explain. Hard Road, which is the road that we're located on, is a 2-lane road and has no sidewalks beside it, and we're in a very densely populated area. Basically, we're in the middle of a residential area with many apartments and single-family housing and multiple family housing. So you can't get here by sidewalk. You have to walk along a very busy road in order to get here. The city has put up signs encouraging drivers to be aware that there will be pedestrians along the road. They've put up library entrance signs, but there is nothing that actually stops the traffic. And that's for people coming from the south. East-west, there are no sidewalks for people to use, and if you're coming from the north, the community has sidewalks in the residential area. We still need to work with some of the neighbors to acquire a walkway on a right-of-way area that does exist, and it would mean that they would lose part of their backyard, which is small, but we want to effect that change also.
And then, as you mentioned, Hard Road is quite a busy street. Has there been much thought given to perhaps putting in a traffic signal to help people cross?
We have requested that a traffic signal be installed. The city has done its studies, and at this point in time, we do not warrant or meet the criteria that the city needs in order to install a traffic light. They have agreed that they will continue to monitor it, and we will continue to work toward that end. Crosswalk would also be an interim solution, but we need to be sure that traffic is slowed or stopped someplace close to the library. There have been 2 children hit by cars along as they were leaving the library, and there have also been 3 vehicular accidents at the intersection of the library. So in 6 months and 5 accidents is more than we had hoped, and certainly it causes the parents to be very, very nervous about allowing children to come by themselves to the library and also coming to the library themselves. But again, we are busy and everyone wants to work together to solve the problem as quickly as we can.
We're in Columbus, Ohio with John Best of the Far Northwest Coalition. What is the coalition?
Our coalition basically is an umbrella group which consists of a good number of subdivisions that have homeowners or civic associations, and basically our area within Northwest Columbus has approximately 40,000 residents, so it's a good size area.
And what sort of problem do pedestrians find up there?
Well, basically, we have a couple of problems. One is that we have very few sidewalks on our major arterials. The subdivisions themselves have sidewalks, and the streets are basically the standard 36-foot width in the subdivisions, but when you go out to the arterials, we have 20-foot wide streets, roadways with ditches on each side. So anyone that wants to go to any point of interest, whether it's the schools on those arterials, the library, or a shopping mall, basically they have to hop in their car.
And so we're forcing people to drive. Now, the street systems in some of these suburbs are a bit irregular, with a lot of cul-de-sacs with no connections for pedestrians. What sort of troubles do you find as a result of that?
Well, one particular situation that comes to mind is we have a high school, a middle school, and an elementary school that are up against a railroad, and we have this 2-lane road, and it's a major arterial again with no sidewalks, and there are kids that live on the other side of the tracks that have to make it one way or another to school. And while a lot of them do in fact get bused, there are some kids that live close enough that they have to walk. So a lot of them have taken kind of the path of least resistance, and they either they've walked the tracks themselves, which of course is a dangerous situation, and they may cut at a cul-de-sac that's abuts the tracks, and they'll cut through somebody's yard. There are no pedestrian pathways that the city required the developer to put in. So that's one scenario that comes to mind.
And what's transit like out in the suburbs?
Well, our system is kind of antiquated in that we have the old wheel system where there's the hub, the downtown area, and all the major bus lines come into the downtown. Our principal problem is that we have no way to go from suburb to suburb, and while we hope we had a problem with a levee a couple of years ago that didn't pass, we hope to see an expansion of the system itself, and hopefully the area will be easier to get around.
We're in Columbus, Ohio with Shelley Whalen, who's Executive Director of the Community Mediation Services of Central Ohio. What is it that a mediation service does?
Essentially what we do is bring parties who may be in conflict over any one of a number of issues together, and with the help of a neutral third-party facilitator, help the folks in conflict sort out their areas of difference and bring their collective energy and wisdom to bear on how to resolve those differences in a way that creates what we refer to as a win-win outcome between the disputants. That is, we help the folks in conflict reach a solution that everyone involved in the conflict is comfortable with.
And I guess frequently people get involved in an argument or dispute, and emotions carry the moment, and they don't necessarily think they have enough in common with the other person to use a service like yours. Are you successful much of the time?
Statistically, we have about a 75% success rate. We measure that by determining not only how frequently people reach a resolution at the table, but then we follow up with them after the fact to make sure that everybody is actually following through on what they agreed to do and are satisfied with the outcome. And when you take all of those criteria into account, we have about a 75% success rate.
And when would pedestrian issues or pedestrian safety be an issue in a dispute brought in front of you?
We've had these kinds of issues come to us. For example, a case that we worked on recently involved a developer wanting to do quite a bit of building on 100 acres of what was currently farmland in a neighborhood of single-family homes. A lot of people in the neighborhood were concerned about the impact of this development on pedestrian safety, in the sense that if there was a lot of building going on, what would that do to traffic flow in the area? What impact could that have on pedestrians, kids walking to school if the traffic flow was heavier in the area? They were also concerned about car safety for people in the neighborhood, and what impact having a higher density of traffic in the neighborhood, what impact that would have on neighbors' safety.
And what sort of things do you look for when you have a case like that in front of you?
Well, what we want to do is bring all of the folks involved in that particular case, the developer, as well as multiple representatives from the neighborhood, as well as some technical experts from city government, folks who had expertise in traffic engineering and zoning related issues. And we want to bring these people together, and did, so that everybody could talk about the nature of their concerns, and we could help folks brainstorm a variety of different potential solutions that could help the competing interests, that is to say, the interest of the developer to have a monetarily successful development achieved, while at the same time addressing the concerns of the area residents. We brought the people together to sort out their differences, and again, bring their collective wisdom to bear on how to resolve these issues in a win-win sort of way.
We're in Bethesda, Maryland, at the intersection of Bradley Boulevard and Goldsboro Road. This is our intersection of the month. There are a lot of factors that go into whether or not an intersection is pedestrian friendly. Traffic volume and traffic speed are some obvious ones. With the high traffic volume, you have to wait longer until there's a gap in the traffic. Traffic speed, the faster the traffic, the bigger that gap has to be for you to make it safely across the road. And then there's some very basic things about intersection design that can help out pedestrians. Things like marking a crosswalk so the pedestrians know where to be and the cars know where to expect the pedestrian. Pedestrian signals, so you know what part of the signal is safe to cross. Then there are some other factors, such as the width of the road. Bradley Boulevard here is 6 lanes wide, not a real friendly crossing distance. Goldsboro Road, although most of it is just 2 lanes wide, spreads out to 4 lanes here for the intersection. Once again, they haven't done anything to make it friendly for pedestrians. Other factors are the speed of turning cars. Goldsboro Road has been designed with very large radius curves with yield signs, designed to keep the traffic moving fast. Once again, not very pedestrian friendly. Another thing that can be done to make things easier for pedestrians is to break up the intersection with islands, so you only have to cross one direction of traffic at a time. When they widened Bradley Boulevard and put in this intersection 35 years ago, that's one of the things they did. They had some little pedestrian islands, so you did half of Bradley and then the other half. On Goldsboro, you did the right turning traffic and then the left turning traffic. Makes the job a lot easier for a pedestrian. Only one thing to worry about at a time. Recently, the State Highway Department's been repaving Goldsboro Road and done a little work on reconstructing the intersection here. They tore out the little traffic islands that provided a pedestrian refuge. The only good thing that was done with this intersection 35 years ago has been removed. There's now nothing between pedestrians and the oncoming traffic but a painted line on the pavement. State highway engineers need to take a remedial course in pedestrian-friendly intersection design.
Is there a dangerous intersection where you live? Nominated for Intersection of the Month. Write to Perils For Pedestrians, care of FCAC, 2929 Eskridge Road, Suite S, Fairfax, Virginia, 22031.
We're in Honolulu with Philip Anna, who's Core Services Coordinator for the Hawaii Centers for Independent Living. What are these centers?
Hawaii Center for Independent Living is a private nonprofit agency, and it's run for and by persons with disabilities. And its mission is to ensure the rights of persons with disabilities to live independently in the community.
And you use that word independently. What's the importance of that?
What that involves is mainly placement in the community. The center provides a multitude of services to enable a disabled person to live independently. And those services could be housing, could be benefits, could be attendant referral, peer counseling, advocacy. All of the main issues or services to enable someone to be outside in the community independently.
We're here with Lourdes Smugas, an independent living specialist at the Hawaiian Center for Independent Living. What's been your experience with transportation as a wheelchair user?
Well, in Hawaii, it's a small island, and it's easy. Well, because it's a small island, I know people would say that it's easy to get around, but my experience is transportation really was a real hard for me, because I used to live like really far. It's in the countryside, and I usually take the paratransit, and it takes me 2.5 hours to come to work and also to go home. And my back is getting sore, and it's just sometimes waste of time riding the van. And so, and there's no buses that time before that goes there. We had accessible buses now in 1992, and that's really a big difference for people with disabilities, because we can't travel now anywhere in town. And they're also starting to bring more accessible buses to go to countryside. And so I guess our state are trying to provide more accessible transportation to people with disabilities. I started to drive this year. I decided to drive my own van because I just cannot rely on paratransit, and here you have to make 24-hour reservation before you can use the service. And if you have planned for the day, you cannot just go and call them up, because you have to make a ahead of time reservation. And I just want to be independent and to live like a normal person, hop in your car and go wherever you want to go. So that's really drove me to learn how to drive and be able to be more independent.
What sort of modifications did they have to do to your van so that you could use it?
Since I was born with without 2 legs and an arm, I was a victim of thalidomide poisoning. So the modification was kind of hard, and we have to do a lot of thinking and creative thinking, actually. With my van, I have a wheelchair lift and hand control, but the additional feature for my van is we're trying to find a steering device for amputee, without an arm, and I tried to find somewhere in the mainland if they have one, and unfortunately no one had made that kind of device. I knew what I need, and I told my coworker Max Balbuena, he's one of our independent living specialists, that maybe if he could, make that for me, I'll try to explain to him what I want, and maybe we can do something. And so I drew the picture. It's like a cup, and it would be attached to the steering wheel, and then I used this to steer the wheel, and he did it. So now I was even joking my coworker that he should patent it, because no one in the island or in the mainland made that kind of, device. So now I'm driving that with that steering device.
We have Joanne Bosserdet, who's an independent living specialist. Known wheelchair users face many obstacles. Can you tell us about some of those?
Sidewalk ramps. I know here in Hawaii, and I don't think it's all over, because I've been to the mainland, but they build elderly and disabled housing, or just housing that's supposedly accessible for the disabled, and the sidewalk have no ramps. And so you're either going around in circles, or you're trying to find a driveway, and then you're in the road. I use the bikeways a lot to get where I'm going. And there's a Kalanianiole Highway. I think for the past 4 years they've been widening it, and they finally finished it a few months ago. And come to find out, they have the street light poles in the middle of the sidewalk, fire hydrants sitting in the middle of the sidewalk, the bus stop benches, and but they do have ramps on the sidewalks. That's one thing they do have.
So you can get on the sidewalk, you just can't go anywhere once you're on it.
That's right, yeah. I have been with some friends that have used my placard for us to park, and we've seen people in disabled parking, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm just going in to get something," or whatever. That's their excuse for using that stall there.
They think it's 5-minute parking, not disabled parking.
Right, yeah.
And here on the islands, a lot of people coming to the islands might be interested in going to the beach. What's available for someone there?
Oh, we have this beach chair. It's fabulous. It has these huge, big tires, and you can go right into the water with this. It'll float right in the water. You can only go so far, and then, but these beach chairs allows a disabled person. You get on it, and then your attendant. You need to have an attendant because it's not like a wheelchair. It doesn't have the, and you can go right into the water. You get off the chair into the water and go enjoy our ocean. Beautiful. And then when you're ready, you get right back on it, and it goes on the sand. These tires are huge, so it'll go across the sand really easy.
We're here with Joe Hawks, who's an independent living specialist at the HCIL. What are some of the issues you've been dealing with?
Well, most recently I've been working with the task force to determine the feasibility of a volunteer parking enforcement for disabled parking.
And has this been a problem that it needs enforcement?
Yeah, I think so, because you can go around the island and see a lot of times where people are parked in disabled parking spots that don't have a placard. And if you stick around long enough, you'll find out they're not disabled. So they're taking up a space that a person with a disability could use.
And you said we need a special force for this? This is something the police can't do?
Well, the police say they can do it, but it doesn't always get done. And what our task force was trying to do was to determine what areas that they have the most problems with the disabled parking, and to kind of pinpoint those areas and find out what the problems are. And we found out that a number of jurisdictions have different kinds of parking regulations and different kinds of fines, and the parking stalls are not always designed according to the ADAG. So sometimes they could actually not be called a disabled parking facility because they're not designed properly. Not the proper signage, not the proper width, no access aisles, things like that. Or they're put in some real crazy places. They put them where there's no ramp to get up to the sidewalk.
So you can park, but then you can't go anywhere.
But you can't go anywhere, right? Yeah.
We have here Max Balbuena, who's an independent living specialist and an elderly blind services teacher. What sort of things have been done to assist blind pedestrians?
We're glad that sometime early this year, the city and county transportation division have installed an audible crossing signal for our intersection, which is widely used by most of our blind clients that comes to the center. So we're glad that they responded to our request.
And what this is something that would make noise so that a blind pedestrian would know that the walk signal is on.
That's right. So, so when the pedestrian wants to cross the street, like everybody else, they have to push the button. And when it's time for the pedestrian to cross, there's a signal that would tell them that it's the pedestrian's turn to cross. And that really helps.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.